yet. I'm just just started to market the book. I guess I don't know, maybe 3, 4 months ago, and I have another book I've written, but I won't launch until probably next year.
And what's that book?
It's basically a follow-on.
Mike,
to
do me a
this
favor.
one.
Go
It's
sit in each one
about
of those
leadership.
chairs. Let me see if I
So
can
what,
zoom out or
and
anything.
it's more about what your dog taught you?
Similar. So it kind of takes a look at different traits in dogs and how they apply to leadership characteristics. So
Wow, I love it.
yeah, it's different.
Okay, I got it.
So that's going to be cool.
I need a
Well, I
tan.
hope so. But
I need
yeah,
some sun.
after 25 years running many businesses at Canon, I needed to do something. So I figured I'd start my own business and then write a book. So
And how is,
Okay.
so do you do anything more having to do with, with, I mean, with Canon? Were you doing the cameras? What were you doing?
oh no, I was running various parts of the office equipment business. So I started my first 10 years there, basically as Canon transitioned from analog copying technology to digital network connected type
Yeah. Right, and I believe that's beginning. Good. Nope. Nope. Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. Sorry.
What's that picture you have back there?
Which one?
The one that I'm seeing on the monitor.
Gene. There are a lot of pictures. You talking about the background? The background is the Highline Standard from a hotel room that I shot with my iPhone for 30 minutes, and I made it the background of the show.
That's not the standard.
Yes, it is. That's looking on the Hudson River. That's looking over where the Titanic was supposed to come down.
Are we going live at 5:30?
Yeah, what time is it?
5:31.
Okay. So, Mike?
Yep.
Yes,
This
give
mic.
the mic.
Turn the volumes up. You ready?
Yeah, but I'm going to have to get
Well, when you
this
start
guy
talking.
going. Okay. When you open Facebook, it should open. Go to like Chrome, open Facebook, and it should open right as much.
Do you even know what you're doing here?
He doesn't
No.
know what he's
But
doing.
Dennis, you're off. Gene's coming on first.
Oh, all right.
I use search here.
Gene's more important
I
than
gotta
me.
zoom out.
Because I came in
Gotta zoom out a little bit.
online.
He has more camera experience.
How come you don't have the, like, chairs? How come you have this?
Because I like these mics. But we can get another table. Why? You want another table?
And
Are we
some
live?
other chairs.
Make us live. Don't play the open yet. Please.
Yeah, okay.
You can tell I got caught behind the 8 ball today.
You look like Jane
Are you
Hanson.
ready?
Does she look like Jane Hanson?
What do you want? You want,
You dyed your hair blonde. We got a little blonde going on here.
We
I'm
got
on
the famous
Facebook,
Jane
right?
Hanson here.
are
Mike.
you ready?
Yeah, bring us on, but don't do the open yet to the show, the animated open. Just bring Jane and I on. Jane, that sure looks good on that background.
Of
Make
course
sure-
it does.
How do you know this?
Because that's what you do when you're, been on TV forever and ever and ever. You figure out colors.
Wait a minute. Are you that Jane Hanson?
Unfortunately today, yes.
Jane, I'm going to introduce you in a second. Today we have a great show, but I want to do the. Hold on a second. I'm going to go to Streamcast Network,
Are you turned? You
Mike-
got this turned on, or like what's
Mike
the deal
Mayone. We're
here?
live.
Really?
Mike Mayone. Do you know what time it is?
Yeah,
What time is it, Mike?
it's time to start the show.
Mike Mayone. Let's roll 'em.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna start sharing this all over the place.
You know, I can hear in the background. I'm hearing the toot of the train.
I know. Can you imagine all this money? Soundproof.
Well, I think he's just excited that I'm here.
Jane, we're all excited that you're here.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
Welcome to Anatomy of an Entrepreneur, where Cliff is always ready to go, and he's always set up.
Not what I
He's
saw, but
al-
go on.
Jane, let's be nice.
Okay, sorry.
So,
Good evening, everybody.
let's talk about a few things first.
Afternoon.
This
Where
show-
are we? What time is it?
This show is brought to you by My Instant Office. If you need a desk, a chair, by the day of the week, the month, an office, anything, we got it. We do it on volume. Come on
Really?
in, sit down, get to work. Mike, I guess I should slump.
No, I'm gonna fix you after I go to a 2-shot.
Yeah, I need to be fixed all right, like a cat.
Are we really on the air?
Yeah. Jane, this is like, this is.
Oh, he's coming around now, so you've shamed him into it.
Yeah, share your story, share on your timeline. Okay. Also, this show is brought to you by the
Yes.
Huntington Chamber of Commerce.
With all the good restaurants they have.
You
In
actually have
Huntington.
been to one of them.
Yes.
There's cl-
Babalu.
Babalu. You know, there's close to 100 restaurants in the Huntington Village.
I heard that. There have been several people since I related my experience at Babalu that have told me the very same thing.
Huntington is a happening town.
Actually, one of my producer, the guy who did Jane's New York for all those years, lives in Huntington, and he has talked about the wonderful culinary talents
And
here.
it's just, there's so much going on out there, that town. There's like this artsy movie theater, Cinema Arts. There's the Paramount, where they have a lot of big name acts there. I don't know if you've ever played there, but
If I'm not talking, I haven't played
Yeah.
there. Trust me.
and there's a gigantic Y. There's big parks there.
That's cool.
It's a very happening little town, and it's not that. It's pretty accessible to Manhattan as well.
Yeah,
It's a 1-hour ride.
love it.
So
And there's a train right out the back door here. Apparently,
Anyway.
I heard it.
you did hear the train. That is the Port Jefferson line, which actually goes to Huntington. So Jane Hansen, we're very happy you're here. You called me about an hour and a half ago.
I stopped by on a whim because I wanted to do something. I wanted to do some live streaming, and then I thought, well, this is a good opportunity.
Well, all I know is you called me up and you were just like in a huff. And I said, well, do you want to come on and be in a huff? And you were like, okay. And so I, quite frankly, have no clue
About why I'm in a huff.
while you're here. And I'm like still setting up the show.
So you just want me to talk so I can save
Hi.
you, right?
Say hello to Jane.
From whom?
I'm
you're
just
just
I'm just
saying
putting
that.
it out there.
Oh, okay. Hi.
So Jane, what's going on? Why are you here?
Well, I'm supposed to be at this wonderful event, this lovely thing that I was going to do this evening at a theory store in Lower Manhattan, and there were going to be, 75 women, and we were going to talk about.
Oh, I saw that post.
Yeah, I talk about how women communicate differently than men, and some little tips and tricks and all that thing. And it got canceled at 1:00 this afternoon, and guess why?
Let me guess. Does it have to do with a beer?
No, but then they want you not to know that it sounds like a beer, but yes, indeed.
It was because of coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
Yeah.
And it was very disappointing. And then earlier in the day, I was supposed to have a couple of client meetings. Both of them got canceled. I've had just tons of things canceled over it's just crazy what's going on. And I know the show's called The Anatomy of an Entrepreneur, but
Yes.
this is one of the difficulties of being an entrepreneur, which is what I am,
Right.
is that, your business is your life. And if you don't do the work, you don't get paid. And other companies where people are working remotely or that sort of thing, they don't have that issue. So there's a whole bunch of small businesses in this country.
Small. All size businesses are getting affected by it.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying the kinds of businesses where you're either a sole proprietor or maybe 2 or 3 people, and where things are getting postponed, and it's really tough out there. And
Yeah.
I felt like those people needed a voice.
So what are you here to say?
That I'm the voice. What I'm here to say is we have to figure out how we're going to deal with this. And it's also confusing. And I think it's really kind of sad what's happening.
You know, we need to do a show on this whole coronavirus thing. Mm-hmm. And so I have somebody on next week from Habitat for Humanity, but maybe you want to come back the week after and we do a show all about what's happening. I mean, I had a guy in here today who works for this gigantic event company. They're all ready to go cocoon, and they're gigantic.
Right. Well, and that's a problem. There have been many events. I was supposed to go Friday to the American Heart Association's. I forget the exact title, but it's Go Red for Women, I think is what it is. But it's held every March, and it's a wonderful thing to bring awareness because lots of women die of heart disease. Canceled. I mean, I could go down a long string of events because I do a lot of these events that I participate in because I really believe in community service and giving back and all that good stuff. And now it's like a tidal wave.
It's out of control.
Right. And I don't know what the right thing to do is. I mean, obviously, I don't want people getting sick, but at the same time, I really think we really need to think about how can we work then. Like I can do a lot of work virtually and live streaming here. This is all virtual. This is great. You are probably, check out that smile on his face.
I got actually a few calls today. One of them from a CEO, a former CEO of a Fortune 500, who says, I'm on the board of all these things. Now it's in my best interest to push you.
Yes.
He goes, I need to push you.
Yes, exactly.
Not only that, but I just got a text from a guy who's starting a show next week. He's running for New York State Assembly. He's coming in to do shows here. He didn't do it because of what's going on with coronavirus, but think about all the events that he needs to go to.
Right.
And how many may be canceled and how this is going to help his run for New York State Assembly.
Absolutely. So I guess what I'm saying is, yes, we're all going to be working. We're going to be doing a lot of work virtually. And I do a lot of virtual work, which I love to do. I mean, obviously, one-on-one in person with my coaching is always the best. But virtually through a number of different things, like usually I use Zoom or something like that. I know you've got Facebook Live on here now.
And YouTube.
But you can do a lot of stuff virtually, and I think that's probably going to be the name of the game for the next several months.
Here's what I think. I think not only is it going to be the name of the game for the next several months, but as we come out of this, it's going to start changing the way we think about work permanently.
Right. Oh, I think you're right.
And I think, look, I don't think live streaming is going to take over or virtual worlds will take over.
No.
But it's going to change the way we think, and people will start implementing more virtual meetings, virtual events, or complementing live scaled events. I believe that's what's going to happen. And as unhappy as I am about this virus, and I don't wish sickness on anybody, it's not going to hurt me. I'm like, during their last recession, my business grew by 40% a year for about 7 years. Thank you, Canon USA. Because they were
a tease for his next guest, by the way.
Yes.
Everybody.
Well, my next guest was one of my clients.
5G. Oh.
5G is going to be a big deal. As a matter of fact, Jane and I are actually meeting tomorrow to talk about something because of 5G.
Yeah.
And we're going to be able to do this very soon, but I don't want to talk about it right now.
That's called a tease.
Yeah. But it's going to be very cool.
But I really do think you're right about how things are going to change. And one of the things I think is really interesting is you can mesh the two together in a really effective way. And meaning the virtual work and the in-person work and that sort of thing. And maybe it will make us all more efficient when it's done.
And while it's painful for you right now, I think the world is going to adapt.
Yeah.
And in fact, it may provide more opportunities for you in the long run.
That's possibly true. But I also hate to see these events that are that they're wonderful places for people to get together, to do great work. Right. They raise money for great causes. They raise a lot of awareness. I mean, you can do some of that stuff virtually, but you still don't have that experience of enjoying other people and turning it into something that's not only a social event, but it does good. So I feel bad about that.
It does. It's not a fun process. I mean, so many people. I mean, this could cause a recession. It absolutely could cause a recession. I'm thinking, it'll be over in a few weeks. It's not. As a matter of fact, who was it? Who was a friend working for the CDC? Was that you?
Yeah.
And Mike
He's been telling me to
Inamorado.
stock. Yeah, he's been telling me to stock up for months. So in terms of months, yeah. So I've been at this for months in terms of stocking up. But the impact is
Stocking up on
it's going to
what?
stay around for a while. Supplies, just because the
What kind of supplies? Food?
food is good. Canned food. But
Batteries. Have you heard of batteries?
But we're not going to lose electricity.
have you gone to Costco? Have you gone to Costco?
No.
Because I have a family of 5, so I'm getting prepared for like worst case apocalypse like scenarios. So you want to be prepared. That's you go out to Costco. It's like you want to be. You're going to be fighting through lines to get basic supplies. So I was at it months
Shelves are
ago.
empty.
Shelves were all
They are empty.
They're empty.
But it's interesting because I have friends in other parts of the country that I've been talking to, and they're not getting any of the same kind of effect yet. So, you do have to think of large urban area, and we are the largest urban area in the country.
Yeah.
So naturally, we're probably going to be affected first, and we've got lots of international people that have come in on airplanes and that kind of thing. I mean, for Pete's sakes, the head of the MTA was diagnosed with coronavirus. I mean,
Really?
yes.
I think it's a little ridiculous, though, that they're sanitizing the subways like that's going to do anything. Come on. Seriously?
When's the last time you rode a subway?
Sunday?
Okay.
I ride subways a lot.
So do I.
Other than walking.
They're the fastest way to get around Manhattan.
You could be worth $100 million. It's the best way to get around.
Yeah. I mean, I frequently work in lower Manhattan, and I'll be coming from the Upper East Side. It'll take me 20 minutes to get there on, like, the Q train. But if you're...
Q's a good line.
Yeah, it's a great line. You know that when the Q train was being built, because it took forever to get built, I remember going down into that subway underneath the tunnels with then Senator Al D'Amato, and we were in the big waiters going all the way underneath, and it was just crazy. And that was like 20 years before it was ever completed.
Wow.
Or close to being
Really?
completed. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
That thing took forever, so it's awfully nice to see
but
it.
it's great because, I mean, I know we're getting off topic, but the fact that you're on the east side and it's a way for you to get to the west side.
Right.
There's a
And then
conduit to
get
the west side.
downtown.
And to get downtown.
Yeah, and there aren't that many stops, so
Yeah.
it's speedy. But anyway, all right, that's all I wanted to say.
So-
I know you've got a good guest here,
don't
and I
go.
don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, but don't go. Hang out. Don't go home. Hang out. And then,
Do you have pizza?
Yeah, we could do pizza or something.
Okay.
So if you go straight down there,
Yeah.
and through the doors, you go a little bit and you'll see like a glass sliding door. That's
Yeah.
a conference room.
Yeah,
You can call whoever you got to call.
yeah.
Make your calls.
Make my calls.
Make your calls over
Make my
there.
calls.
Yeah, it'd be fine. So
Remember, virtual. We're going to do virtual now, everybody, okay?
Yeah. So with that in mind, Jane, get lost.
How do I get out of here? Like, am I just supposed to walk in front of the cameras now?
So, Mike,
What would you like me
can
to
you
do?
show Jane where the conference?
yeah, sure.
I know when I'm being told to leave.
Can you show where the
better be
conference room
there.
is? Because then we're going to bring Dennis on. Jane, we'll see you later. We're going to have a parting gift for you.
Ciao, ciao.
You get to play the Anatomy of an Entrepreneur game in your own home.
Yeah, so Jane's my warm-up act.
Yeah.
Sorry for those of you I invited to this. I failed to mention that Jane was going to kind of be the kickoff for today's event.
Kind of makes
so-
you pale in comparison.
Well, no, am I that pale or?
No, but I would like to welcome you, Dennis.
Thank you, Cliff.
Dennis
It's nice to be here.
Amarsano, I know you for 25 years.
Yes, yeah, it has been that long.
And you were like a rock star at this company that I used to do a lot of work for.
Well, thank you for saying so.
You worked for them for a long time. You started in the mailroom almost, and it was almost like you made your own luck there, because Michael Markowitz actually told me that story years ago.
Yeah.
About how you made your mark, but I think we should go back to the beginning.
Sure.
Hold on, full history. No, oh, there we go. Okay, my computer died. So, Dennis Amarsano, you have a company. Give me like a 1-minute elevator thingy about who Dennis Amarsano is.
Yeah. So of course, as you know, I spent 25 years at Canon, basically running a whole number of different business units there.
You did.
And so my tenure at Canon ended last March. I mean, believe it or not, I mean it's almost a year to the day that
Really?
I left Canon. Which is
Congratulations.
shocking. Well, thank you. It wasn't intended, but so be it. It's been great. And leaving a company that you're with for 25 years, obviously it brings on a whole new way of thinking in terms of, okay, well, now what am I going to do? So I started my own consulting firm called DEnDog Strategy Insights, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, throughout the course of the show. And I've really been looking at trying to build this new business and bring folks some of the expertise that I feel I was able to build over my
I think that's awesome.
was 30-year career at Canon and other places.
But let's go back to the days of Dennis the Paperboy. Okay, because I read the whole. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for it and I can't find it right now. All that stuff you sent me.
Right.
But I know you started. You grew up in Warwick, New York.
I did,
which
yeah.
is in upstate New York.
Yep,
I have
yeah.
a friend who lives in Chester.
Okay, so
and
you're
I also
familiar with the area.
had a client who we're
Yep.
still friends.
Okay.
He lives in Warwick also. He
Oh,
lives in
no
Warwick
kidding.
and he grew up in Warwick.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
Joseph Bartolotta.
Yeah.
So, hey Joe. So, you grew up in Warwick, which is like a rural area in upstate New York.
Well, you wouldn't think it, right? Because you're only technically 50 miles from Manhattan, right? And so when people think of New York, of course, people who aren't from New York, they think, New York, this big metropolitan area, kind of extends out hundreds and hundreds of miles. But the fact of the matter is, of course, as we know, the city and Long Island are fairly densely populated, but 50 miles north of Manhattan, at least when I was a kid, was cow country. In fact, my parents at the time, they built the seventh or the sixth or seventh house in a housing development, and there was a working dairy farm in the neighborhood when I was a kid. So that was the kind of environment that I grew up in.
Well, you actually grew up in the mountains.
Yeah, actually,
there are small mountains up there.
Warwick is in a valley, so it's Warwick Valley, and it's surrounded by mountains on all sides. So you have the mountains of northern New Jersey, and it's kind of, in some ways, at the foothills of the Catskills. So, but it was a nice, it's one of those places where when you're a kid and you grow up there, you don't appreciate it because it seems boring. There's nothing to do. But when you're an adult and you have your own kids, you're longing to go back and live in a place like that.
Yeah.
So it was actually nice.
Well, maybe someday you will.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
So, but what kind of kid were you? Were you an introvert? Were you a brain? Were you a nerd? Were you like loud and boisterous? What were you like?
No, I mean, I certainly wouldn't say I was an introvert, but I wasn't one of these, extroverted type kids either. I think for me as a kid, the primary focus was really around school, which I enjoyed. I liked school. It was always nice, going to school. I liked my subjects. I liked to go to class and things of that nature. And I was into sports, so I was into all kinds of sports. And of course, back then, the primary sport in the country was baseball. So I was a huge and avid baseball player. I wanted to be a professional baseball player. That's
Just
what I
didn't
wanted
happen.
to do. And of course, that's it's another story. But
Yeah.
suffice to say, so I spent most of my waking hours either at school or practicing.
Yeah.
And
You get a passion.
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I'm just going
I
to
was
interrupt
committed.
you for a second.
Yeah, sure.
Mike, people have been making a lot of comments on what Jane was saying. Did you see that?
Hold on.
Pay attention, Mike. Otherwise,
Okay.
you're going to have to be replaced. As a matter of fact,
Gotcha.
Georgine couldn't make it tonight, so unfortunately, we
Yes, I
got
do
Mike
see the
instead. But there are all these comments in here from when Jane was on, and you let them go. Very upset. So anyway,
Why, you want to talk about coronavirus? We can talk about
we can
that
talk
if you
about.
want.
Well, there's plenty of stuff here to talk
Yeah.
about. I mean, all these live streaming people actually were commenting about how they couldn't agree more about
it
what's
makes
going
sense.
on.
Yeah,
And
sure.
live streaming, Tom Sinclair says live streaming can be a stopgap for the larger community events. But once the crisis passes, the events will resume with gusto.
Sure they will. I mean, it's interesting. Think about what's happened in terms of work and the way people work. And of course, when I was a Canon for 25 years, this is the kind of stuff we thought about, right? We thought about, well, geez, how do we build technology that helps people to be more productive and
Right.
drive better efficiency and so
Right.
forth? And of course, at the time, when I first started, the internet, of course, had been invented, but it wasn't being used commercially. It was only being used in colleges and universities.
Yeah.
And It then was only a matter of time before we saw this explosion in digital technology, and of course, what ultimately came out of that now is a lot of these virtual types of jobs where you're working from home, and it's. Frankly speaking, I think, as you mentioned before when you were speaking with Jane, we're going to see so much more of that. And
it's not going to eliminate face-to-face.
No, of
it's
course
not
not.
going to
It
eliminate
never will.
events. It's not people. I mean, it's so important to have face-to-face.
absolutely.
But it doesn't mean that this is not going to. I'm not going to say force a change. Well, now it's forcing a change.
Yeah, of course.
But that forced change is going to open up people's eyes to what other possibilities there
question.
are.
Yeah, like you said, though, you're not going to replace that human-to-human connection, which is so important in any kind of a business scenario and in terms of transactions. But there's so much that you can do today and do productively without necessarily having to be physically tied to an office. And the technology now is becoming so ubiquitous that for a fairly small amount of money, even the smallest of businesses can have a fairly robust information technology platform, if you will, that they
Absolutely.
can utilize to drive their business. So it's interesting.
Well,
to see
look
where
at
things are
this,
going.
what we're doing
Yeah,
here.
absolutely. It's a
I
perfect
mean,
example.
This is a perfect example of this would only have been possible for a Canon USA 10 years ago.
Yes, no doubt.
And let me tell you something, I would have charged them a pretty penny. Right?
Sure.
But now
Yeah.
I can do this for them, and what they used to pay me for maybe one large-scale project,
right.
they can do this for a year.
Yeah.
Year.
It's unbelievable.
Remember when I used to do those configurators for Canon?
Yes.
Okay, for the price of 3 configurators, you could do this for probably 9 months.
Yeah, no.
And think about all the content you have.
Well, that's the thing. The content is key, right? So, from a marketing perspective, having access to the content and being able to carve up that content and then utilize it in so many different ways in order to influence your target audience and drive your messaging is, you just couldn't do that 10 years ago.
Right.
You were so much limited in terms of the types of things you could do. But now, I mean, with the way in which technology is advanced, it's
Absolutely.
it's opened up this huge set of opportunities for marketers. In fact, I've written a lot about the fact that when I was first starting out at Canon, marketing was very much an art form then, in my view. And it was not very analytical in many respects. So for example, you try something, you'd see if it would work, and oftentimes, the determination as to whether it worked was, well, geez, how did that feel? What kind of reaction did you get? Whereas today, so different. Marketing has become a science. Now, granted, the art form hasn't gone away, but the science of marketing has grown. And
Data.
Everything to do with what's
Which is
going
a
on
problem,
in
by
terms
the
of
way.
digitization. Well, sure. Well, you can drown in data. It's not a matter of data is not what's important. It's the analysis that you can glean from the data and getting the right information that's important.
And to get back at the human factor.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah.
No question.
So I'm going to go backwards, even though this
Yeah,
is
sure.
this is really interesting speak. You go to college. Did you have an idea? Did you still want to play baseball when you were in college?
Oh, absolutely.
You did?
I did play in college.
Oh,
Yeah.
you went to
yeah.
where?
I went to Siena College.
In Pennsylvania?
So say again?
Where's Siena in Pennsylvania?
Siena is just outside of Albany, New York.
Right.
So small Franciscan-based college outside of Albany. They did have a Division I baseball program.
They did?
Yeah, shockingly enough.
And you played D1 there?
I did, yeah. So I played there 4 years, and no, my when I was looking at colleges, it was interesting. I was looking at schools in the South, thinking I'd go to college down south and potentially play baseball. And I had my senatorial confirmations for West Point. I was looking at West Point, and I also looked at Siena. And when push came to shove and it came time to make a decision, it was okay. I can go to a Florida school, and I probably would have gotten a really good education in playing baseball because I would have been focused on doing that probably most of the time. But,
Right.
And the thought was, okay, I kind of dismissed those because I felt, geez, if I don't get drafted and I don't, achieve this goal, then I need to be able to fall back on something, right? So it really came down to whether I was going to go to West Point or whether I was going to go to Siena. And I felt that Siena at the time gave me the best of both worlds. It was a challenging school for me academically, and I had the opportunity to play 4 years, and it turned out to be a really good experience. And of course, I met my wife there, who 28 years later, well, actually more than that, but 28 years of marriage later, so I would say that it turned out pretty good.
3-part question.
Sure.
A, when did you realize baseball was not going to happen? What happened to you when you realized that?
Yeah.
And how did you dig your way out?
I think I realized pretty quickly that
When in college?
not in college.
Okay.
No, I mean I realized pretty quickly. After college, that baseball wasn't going to happen. And so, for example, every June, the Major League Baseball conducts its June draft. So if I was going to have a chance to play professionally, I was going to either have to get drafted in the June draft my senior year in college, or I was going to have to sign with some club, get picked up as a free agent, and go get assigned to a minor league team. And so when that didn't happen, then it was quite obvious at that point I could either continue to try to go to major league tryouts and get picked up and see what would happen. And this is the summer of my senior year now we're talking about. Or I could basically kind of, turn my focus to okay, what am I going to do from a career standpoint? So I actually, my summer of my senior year or after college, basically I had opportunities to go to different professional tryouts, and I didn't go because I came to the realization pretty quickly that, if this was going to happen, I would have been drafted and
Already.
and I'd be there. Yeah. And so I made the decision pretty early that, okay, I'm going to go pursue, whatever career it is I'm going to end up in. And so was I disappointed? Yeah, of course. I mean, when you dream about something since the time you're 3 years old, and that dream, you realize it's not going to become reality, and you're not going to even be given the opportunity to pursue that. Yeah, that's a little demoralizing. But at the same time, I mean, I had so many great experiences and memories from having played so long, and that's really what I kind of held on to. And even to this day, I look back and I said, geez, this was really just a great set of experiences, and I got to play against great competition, a lot of guys who played at the major league level. So I if I had to script it, I mean, obviously the best script would have been play professionally, but I didn't do so bad otherwise.
Tell me something. This is like a college kid type question.
Yeah.
Tell me something that you took away from the entire baseball experience that you brought with you to the rest of your career.
Oh, goodness. I mean,
Go.
Yeah, well, sports, I mean, sports in general is a metaphor for life, right? I mean, when you think about it. And even with my own kids, we always had our kids play sports because we felt that not only was it good for them, but they would learn so many life lessons by doing so. And it's true. I mean, you learn how to compete. You learn how to work in teams. You learn how to set goals and achieve them, right? So all of these things were things that I think all those years of playing and playing competitively kind of prepared me with and kind of helped to build the skills necessary then that I took into the various positions I held from a business perspective all throughout my career.
Right.
And so, again, I mean, do I look back and say, geez, God, I wasted all that time and all the work I put in and everything else? No, I never looked at it that way. I mean, because to me, it wasn't work. I loved it. I mean, in fact, to some degree, I like practicing more than I like playing in the game.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that. And again, it kind of, built in many ways the skills and the foundation for all the things that I've used in business and life to many degrees.
It sounds like you really weren't that upset that you didn't end up being a baseball player.
No, I mean,
it's almost like you grew out of it.
Well, to some degree, yeah. But again, you have to be, I think, pragmatic in many respects, right? I mean,
and you could do that. You weren't like, oh, man.
Yeah, because
am I
you have to realize that. Think about it, right? Major League Baseball today, you have roughly 850 players, let's say, right, and on all the rosters. So these are the best 850 players in the world.
Yeah.
Right. So the potential to reach that level is so remote. The skill level required is so unique that again, it's only going to be that small handful of people who are going to be able to do that. So was I disappointed? Yeah, of course. I mean, I didn't want to stop playing. I still wanted to play because I loved it. But at the same time, I had to come to the realization that there are just people in the world that are better than you. And it's interesting because when I left high school, like every player on my college team, I was a big fish in a little pond in high school, in terms of being a player. And every player on my college team was the same way, right? And then when you get to college, you see another level of competition. And again, this is no different than in business as well, right? So you see another level of competition, and you start playing against guys that they're playing a different game. Like when I was playing against like a Craig Biggio or a Jeff Bagwell, for example, two guys I played against in college, or a Mo Vaughn, they were playing a different game than I was. So if
you realized that early on, and you were okay with it because you said, okay, this is the way it is.
Absolutely, it is what it is.
But it's a very mature attitude to take at a tender young age.
Yeah, well, I didn't say I was happy about it, but that was just the reality,
I got it. But it was
right?
reality, and you accepted it.
Yeah, sure, of course.
How the heck did you go from college and growing up in Warwick, New York, going to Siena to college, and I know you had a stint at NCR.
Yep, sure.
But how the heck did you end up at this behemoth, 800-pound gorilla, Canon USA?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I mean, when I left Siena, I was actually a finance major at Siena, and I was a finance major after I had been a political science major. So, as it turned out, when I left Siena, I thought for sure, okay, I'm going to go work in the financial services industry. Maybe I'll be a stockbroker, or, I'll work in the insurance, industry. And the best job opportunity I had out of college was actually going into the sales program, becoming a salesperson at NCR. And it was ironic because in college, I literally had to take a computer course in college because it was a required course. It was the only technology course I took, and I wanted nothing to do with technology when I was in college, nothing.
And your whole career is based on...
Meanwhile, my whole career is technology. Go figure. So, I mean, it's a good lesson for people in that you just don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know the direction life is going to take you. You don't.
Yep. And here's what I always tell people about my career.
Yeah.
I didn't find my career.
Yeah.
My career found me.
Yeah, it's so true.
And life is like that in general.
Yes, it is.
The strangest things happen that you'll never...
You could never write the
You could be in
script.
touch with somebody one day or for like 3 years, and then all of a sudden, poof, it's gone. And then a year later, all of a sudden, or 5 years later, you happen to see that person again and you become friends again, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It could be in business. It could be like, you know, Cliff, I'm not going to use your services. And 2 years later, it'd be like, Cliff, we need your services.
That's right. Yeah.
You just never
You
know.
just don't. And so I go to NCR, and I lived for the better part of a year in Dayton, Ohio. And I was in their sales training program, which at the time was probably the most well-known, most reputable training program in the computer industry. In fact, IBM had modeled their program after NCR's.
Like Xerox did with Spin.
Xerox, by the way, modeled a lot of their program after NCR's as well.
They did? I thought that was all about Huthwaite and Spin.
No, Huthwaite did Spin, but if you look at the history of, for example, these kinds of salesperson training programs in industry, NCR was really the first organization to put these kind of infrastructures in place.
Yeah.
So I spent about a year in that program, and 4 years later, I'm in sales at NCR, and I wanted to move into marketing. I had done sales for 4 years, and I really felt that, at that time, I didn't feel as if I wanted to spend my entire career in sales. I really wanted to move into marketing. That's what interested me. And I was trying to do that in NCR. I was trying to move to their Atlanta facility, which is where all their retail sales and marketing activity emanated from. And it just turned out that the timing wasn't right. And so I put my resume out on the street, and I ended up getting hired by Canon. And it's so interesting. When I was hired by Canon, I was 26, I think, and boy, oh boy, was I so naive. I had no idea what I was getting into, other than the fact that it was a marketing position, because I basically went to work for Canon in what at the time was called the Digital Imaging Systems Project in the copier division. And so this wasn't a division. It was like, okay, this is a novel idea. We're going to try something. We'll create a little project and let's hire some people into the project and let's see if we can make a go at kind of bringing this new technology to market. And of course, I had no idea that's what was going on when I
The
joined
craziest
the
part
company.
about that,
Right.
and I don't want to get too much into technology,
Yeah.
is that little thing that you got involved with that nobody even knew anything about ended up being the beef, the crux of your career.
Oh, but no question. Yeah, I spent my first 10 years at Canon. Who knew? But I spent my first 10 years at Canon working with many other great people in the organization, basically building what became Canon's core business. Go figure.
And now, I look at you as like I never realized this about you before because I don't know a lot of your background, your history. But for you to be a really good baseball player means you need to be a competitor.
Oh, sure.
Right? So you're very competitive.
Yeah.
I did not know that about you. You never seemed competitive to me at Canon.
Yeah.
So my question is, how did you rise up to such a high level as probably being one of the most senior Americans in that entire Canon USA or Canon Americas?
I don't know if it really had much to do with me being competitive per se. I mean, I'm more competitive with myself, I think, in some respects than I am like with external competitors. So even when I was running various businesses at Canon, I wasn't one to think a lot about, oh, geez, well, what's Xerox going to do? What's HP doing? What's Ricoh doing? I was more focused on the end customer. To me, that's who I needed to focus on, not what my competitors were doing. I figured if I got the end customer part of things right, it didn't matter what my competitors were doing. But to answer your question, I mean, I always looked at things when I was working at Canon and anywhere for that matter as bringing value. And so I was always of the mindset that in order to be successful in any enterprise you're involved in, you have to figure out how to drive value for that enterprise. And it's not good enough to do that once, twice. You have to do that consistently. It's I think a lot of people look at long-term employees in organizations and they wonder, okay, well, how does that employee stay in that organization so long? And I always think it's a matter of the fact that they're creating long-term value, and they're doing that consistently.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm giving you a big but. And the but is you could be, of course, it's so important about how you make your customer feel.
Sure.
They're important. You're driving value. But if your product falls out of favor and your competitor comes out with some monstrous product that's going to change the world, like this thing called iGen or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
That doesn't matter to your customer. They're going to be like, I got to think about my bottom line.
No, that's true. That's true.
So don't you think it's more of a balance?
No, of course it is. Yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. Look, I mean, if you have a lousy technology, bad product, so forth,
Kodak.
It's in some ways it's hard to create value when you obviously have to have the ingredients necessary to create and deliver value.
Right.
But I'm coming at this from the perspective that I'm making the assumption that you've got those ingredients, right? So on an individual level, then it's really a question of, okay, I have these ingredients. How am I going to kind of meld them together to ultimately drive value for the end customer, for my organization, which eventually then kind of rolls back to you individually. And for me at Canon, I think my opportunity to grow with the organization was based upon, a number of factors. One being that I did have a good understanding of what the marketplace required. And I was able to develop the internal relationships both in the United States as well as with Canon Inc. to design and help push the technology into an area that would satisfy those requirements, and we had success.
Yeah.
I mean, if we hadn't had success, then
By Dennis.
we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Which is the
right
question
now,
I have
right?
for you
Yeah.
is you're rising the ranks at Canon. The fishbowl is getting bigger and bigger. Didn't you feel the pressure And if you did
Oh,
feel the
sure.
pressure, okay, so you did feel the pressure.
Yes.
How did you deal with that pressure and responsibility? Because now you're, instead of being in charge of $20 million, you're in charge of $200 million.
Yeah, I don't know. I
or
mean,
$500 million.
Yeah, that's I think it's a matter of perspective in some respects, right? So you know, the business size itself, for me, wasn't the wasn't the factor, for example, that kind of drove stress or things of that nature. I mean, what drove stress for me in connection with any of these roles was just my own desire to want to succeed, right? And to want to do well, you know, for the company, the employees in the organization, you know, the customers, et cetera. So I never, I would say that I probably had a similar level of stress, you know, in most of the roles I had, regardless of whether, you know, they were, you know, managing a $20 million business or managing, you know, a $100 million business, as an example. So, you know, that being said, I found, which surprisingly enough, I mean, I found in many respects that the higher the level I got in the organization, you know, the thing that was an issue for me in terms of stress wasn't the job itself, because I really enjoyed the jobs I had. It was more the politics, having to deal with the internal politics in the organization, and this is true of any organization. And ultimately, to some degree, I mean, it's the politics inside the organization that really were a primary motivator for me to ultimately do something on my own.
Right. Because the politics get in the way of the productivity. The politics get in the way of the environment. The politics can drive so much negativity if the environment isn't
there's no question
set up.
They can, and you know, honestly, I mean, again, and this is not a Canon specific issue.
A lot of companies
every
are like
company
this.
has these kind of scenarios. But you know, the culture inside the organization with the Canon was a great fit for me for a long time, and
it changed a lot.
It did change a lot. But that being said, I wouldn't trade my experience there for anything. It was great, and the company was fantastic. And I think the company, albeit it's in a challenging industry sector, I think the company, you know, still has a bright future if they can execute well, and I hope they do.
Well, they have to be open to change.
Sure.
They have to be open to adapting.
Well, you know what? But that's true of every business today, right? I mean, think about. To me, it's fascinating when you think about how many businesses today are being disrupted, and they're being disrupted from places that they would have never thought they were going to be disrupted from. Right?
I started a company that disrupts.
Yeah.
Right,
Sure.
and we became became very successful.
Yes.
At one time, I knew more people at Canon than Canon people knew each other. True story. But we were known to be a disruptor. I wanted to come, but guess what? I got blindsided and I got disrupted.
Yeah, that's right.
So the disruptor got disrupted.
Yeah, but you know what? That's happening to every business. I mean, even now in terms of you know, the consulting work I do, when we talk to clients about new business development, you know, you can't sit and look at your current position in the marketplace and expect that the market's not going to change. And frankly speaking, the competitor that you don't see is the one you need to be most concerned about. And whereas in the past it was very difficult to disrupt major players in long-term industry sectors, that's not the case today.
Because technology has democratized so many industries.
It's the great equalizer.
That the control was with the few.
Yep.
And now the control is no longer with the few.
No, it's the technology is the great equalizer in terms of business disruption.
Mike Innamorato, any questions, or do you have any questions or any comments?
How do you measure success in terms of your ability to deliver on marketing strategies? And does that, I'm assuming it must tie into sales at some point, because marketing and sales are different, but you know, they're married in a sense,
question.
right? So,
yeah.
So is there, you know, how do you work with your clients to kind of develop a framework and just realize what they're getting in terms of your services or
Yeah,
what
well,
to
I
expect?
mean, so much is changing in terms of marketing today, as I mentioned before. I mean, marketing was an art. It's really now becoming more of a science. And when you look at the science related to marketing, you kind of have to ask yourself the question, well, what is the primary function of marketing? What is the job of marketing? And I've, my view is that the job of marketing is to really help your organization create qualified sales opportunities, whether they happen to be marketing qualified or sales qualified, depending upon how you measure that. That to me is the role of marketing. So it's really the role of the marketing organization to feed the sales engine and to try to do that in a way that brings qualified opportunities as far down into the sales cycle as you can get them. So, and you can measure that. Right, so as you're building marketing campaigns, marketing activities, and the like, you can basically measure. Okay, well, what kind of reception is this campaign receiving? How many people are reviewing it? How many people are taking specific action related to this? If the campaign involves a WebEx, for example, how many people are attending the WebEx? How many people are filling out information on my website to download the white paper that came with that WebEx? So you can measure all these things to get a good sense as to whether or not the investments that you're making in terms of that marketing activity, and of course you need to track what those expenses are, but are they in fact then leading to marketing and sales qualified leads?
But how do you know that? Like, is that considered ROI to you?
Yeah, cool. Well, eventually, yes, you can compute the ROI in a particular campaign based upon those metrics.
Gotcha. And how much product you sold?
Absolutely.
So you can actually tie it to it?
You most certainly can. Yeah. So marketing is actually, in terms of a discipline inside an organization, marketing is a fairly easy discipline to tie to specific sales results, because again, marketing is linked to sales, and so you can measure the impact that marketing is having on actually bringing a qualified lead to the table and then determining whether that qualified lead actually turns into business. There are other parts of an organization, though, that are much more difficult to measure, right? So, for example, let's say you have a sales training organization. Well, how do you know if a sales training organization is having any impact on leading to sales? I mean, is there a set of metrics that you can use to quantify that and measure it? Not as easily as marketing. You can do it, but not as easily. Think about a creative services group, right? So who create maybe brochures or other types of content. Well, how do you measure whether or not the content they're creating is actually having an impact on sales? And one of the things that we started to see at Canon as the marketplace became more and more challenging, and revenue was getting squeezed and profits were getting squeezed. We had to look at, for example, these shared services types of operations that kind of live around marketing, and ask ourselves the question, well, are they really delivering value? To go back to my earlier comment about value delivery. Well, if we continue to operate business as usual, we would basically say, oh, well, they're delivering value if we kind of feel like they're doing a great job. That doesn't work anymore, right?
No.
So we at the time that I was running a number of those organizations at Canon, we built a whole set of metrics we could use to really determine whether or not those organizations were in the business of creating value for the organization, and we measured them that way.
But this is great conversation, because it leads me to the evolutionary step in your career, that you got all this amazing experience at Canon that 99% of the world never gets the education that you got from working there.
I was very fortunate.
And you took all this experience and said, I'm going, and you decided to go out on your own.
Sure.
Tell us your unique value out there, because there are so many digital strategists.
Oh yeah, well I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say that everybody has a particular unique value. Of course, I think we all believe we do, right? So but I think in my own case, if you look at the specific services that I'm offering in connection with the consulting firm I built, they're really focused around three core areas: strategic planning, new business development, and marketing automation. Those are kind of the three pillars. If I look at my career at Canon, the success I had in my career at Canon was really built upon those three pillars: strategic planning, really putting together effective plans that when executed well, produce great results. New business development, because much of what I did in my 25 years at Canon was really build new businesses. Whether it was building the digital MFP business or the software business or a professional services business or a vertical marketing business. I mean, there was a whole host of new businesses I built.
Not everybody is a Canon. And
That's
not
true.
everybody has the
Yes.
deep pockets, the infrastructure,
Of
the
course.
resources of a Canon.
Yes.
How the heck are you going to help people without all that other stuff behind you?
Well, no, I mean, you got to be focused, and you got to focus on what you're passionate about.
Describe that to me.
Yeah, so again, my focus for any of my clients is around helping them plan better. And in doing that, really helping them to take that process and put in place the structure and the playbook, so to speak, so that they can be more effective in executing that business plan and achieving whatever goal it happens to be, whether it's driving business growth or scaling the business or starting a new business. And it's all about staying focused on that. And I think if you look at what's going on in the marketplace today, and this is especially true with small businesses and with entrepreneurial businesses in general, I mean, think about it. How much time do people really sit down and spend planning? Or do you find that people are kind of chasing their tail, just dealing with the day-and-day issues associated with the business?
We
right?
try to plan.
Yes.
But we're so small.
Yes.
Even the 20 people, 15, 20 people I had working for me, right? So I had some resources.
Yeah.
It's still difficult
It's hard
to plan.
Yes, I understand. But that being said, I mean, this is where I can help clients.
Gotcha.
I can help clients by, number one, getting them to take the time to focus. Now, granted, most people say, "Gee, I just don't have the time. I've got to do this. I've got to do that." But one of the things you learn when you run larger and larger organizations is that you're not being asked to run a large organization, because you can get in the weeds and do the things that need to be done, because you've already proven that. You're being asked to run those organizations because you can bring something strategic to the table. So I can bring that kind of experience to the table and help business owners become much more strategic in their approach.
Can you give us an example of what you've done for somebody and how it's helped them?
Yeah. So again, I mean, this is true. This is true of any business. But if you look at any startup business, right? Whether it's a startup or whether it's a business that's looking to scale, the biggest issue I see in the marketplace is that most of these individuals are basically in a position where they're so focused on trying to manage the day-to-day tasks of the business that they can't get out from beyond the weeds. So as a result, yes, their business might be having success, they might be driving growth, but the question is, can they be more effective in doing that? So where I've helped clients is really helping them get focused on, again, kind of taking the time needed to and again, it doesn't take a lot of time, but taking and dedicating the time needed to really sit down and do some effective planning. And I have a set of processes and methodologies that I use to do this that those business owners can then take and learn how to use and replicate themselves
And
as
implement
they
it.
move forward. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question.
And yeah, sure. Go ahead, Mike.
With the planning, I find I have a small business as well, so I'm trying to relate it to what I do, and I hear this from other people too. Is it vision a big part of a lot of startups and a lot of entrepreneurial type companies? I think having a really clear vision and a set of goals is important, but to be able to really kind of drive that, because in what I do day to day, it's kind of just doing the work and getting that done.
Yep.
But having that type of vision, I think, will make the plan easier. Do you help with that in terms of?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
companies'
again, I think to a large degree that's really the domain of the business owner, right? Because that business owner is going to be the in many respects the subject matter expert in terms of what their business is, what they want it to be, where they want to go. But what I can do for a client is I can kind of help focus them so that they can ultimately determine those things, right? So instead of all the extraneous things that many business owners are focused on, which are oftentimes kind of task-oriented, I can get those owners more focused on, okay, fine, yes, you need to do these tasks in order
Because
for
they
the business
can't be
to happen.
objective.
You've got to get more strategic in how
Right.
you look at the
Right.
business, right? And where do you want that business to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? and if that's the case, okay, let's get that on paper, and then let's determine, okay, what specific actions now do I need to take in order to make that happen?
Right.
So when you start to apply that kind of a methodology to business planning, again, it's very difficult at first, but what I find, and again, I'm a product of my own, my own musings here,
Right.
but what you find is that it gets easier and you become more effective at it, and you start to then get really focused on what are the few key levers I can pull that are going to have the biggest impact on the business, right? But the vision has to come from the business owner, right? I'm not typically going to go in and give them a vision. Now, if it's a technology-oriented firm, maybe I can, just given my experience. But for the most part, companies that are outside the tech space, that I may not have the subject matter expertise to
Yeah.
provide what I think is going to be, the best path for that business owner to take.
So, Dennis, we only have a couple minutes left. Mike, did you ever bring the credits down from the iCloud?
No, I don't even know how. I don't know where they are.
They're in the iCloud in the iCloud folder.
Which folder?
It'll say BYG AOE 3/20/2020.
This show is produced by Cliff Sobel
Yeah.
in cooperation with
While it's live.
cooperation with the Huntington Town Square
That's right. There you go.
or Chamber of Commerce, I should
Right, with
say.
a donation from the
Yes.
Amorsano Foundation.
Yeah, right.
I'm afraid we can't find it.
Okay, don't worry about it, Mike.
What type of clients do you help?
Yeah, it ranges. Again, I would
question,
say for me, the ideal client is in fact a company that's kind of past their startup phase, frankly, and looking to scale their business. I think a lot of businesses, they start and they get to a certain size, and
Would Streamcast be big enough, or we're probably still too small for you, correct?
No, but you're getting to a point where you've got a stable enough business where then it becomes a matter of, okay, how do you take this stable business I have and how do
blow
you
it up.
then scale it,
Right.
right? And so I like to work with companies that are in the tech space and are really at the point where they've demonstrated an ability to address a market need, but they're really ready to figure out, how do I scale? And scaling's hard. It's not easy, right? If it were so easy, everyone would do it. But my ideal client is a client who's in that type of position. But that being said, I mean, the things that I do, whether they be planning or whether they be new business development or marketing automation, are really quite generic in terms of the types of businesses they apply to. So, any commercial type enterprise potentially is a target customer for me, just based upon the methods that I would provide them to drive those kinds of activities, given the experience
Right.
that I've had for 25 plus
So,
years.
Dennis, I have this one question I ask our guests. It's usually towards the end of the show, and I want to ask you this question.
Yep.
I own a startup. Usually I talk about it from a point of view of a kid who's young, but I'm
Yeah.
I'm a young guy or a young gal, and I have this startup. I've owned it maybe for like a year or two,
Yep.
3 years. It's now starting to show signs of life.
Yep.
Give me some advice that I could do on my own to continue to build it.
Yeah. Well, I think every startup is going to reach a point where the nature of the business and if they're having some success is going to start to raise questions as to whether or not you need to make investments in people, in technology, and whatever the case might be, right? So I think for companies that again have kind of demonstrated some basic level of success, I think it's key for them to really sit down and think long and hard about where are they going to make their next key investments as a way to drive growth, and that takes planning. It's really I'm not one of these people who would say, okay, let's just throw something at the wall and see if it works, right? Most small businesses don't have that luxury. Now, I had that luxury at Canon, frankly, right? I mean, Canon wasn't going to go out of business if I tried something and it happened to fail.
I can't
right?
tell you how much money they wasted on stuff I did.
Well, I don't think I wasted a lot, but I'm sure I wasted some. But that being said, most small businesses don't have that luxury. So,
Right.
so again, business owners in these types of organizations need to be very strategic and think about, okay, I've brought the business to this level. Where now do I need to make the next set of investments in order to drive growth? And I think business owners have to take a long, hard look at that. Otherwise, they may very well find themselves,
Yeah.
pedaling backwards and getting themselves into trouble. So that's the advice I would give to most businesses in that situation.
Well, I got to tell you, Dennis, you actually, your story is way better than I thought it was going to be.
Jeez, Glenn, what does that say? You thought I was going to be boring?
I have my friend Robert. We know each other 50 years.
Yeah.
And he is an attorney, opened the first American law office in Moscow
Yeah.
when the wall was coming down.
Well, see, that's exciting.
And we've been friends for 50 years.
Yeah.
And he calls me No Filter Cliff.
Uh-huh. I can see why.
So,
Yeah.
no, but your story is great. Your journey is good. I really like what you're doing with your digital strategy company.
Yeah, thank you.
And I really want you to come back so that we can follow your journey
Sure.
on how you're going to scale this.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to do so.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you'll definitely come back. Also, we have other things that we want to talk about.
Sure, absolutely.
To work together. And I really appreciate you coming down 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I'm becoming like a regular
And
on this show.
yeah, and giving up some time to our friend Jane Hansen.
Well, Jane's going to owe me one, so we'll have to see what kind of favor I'm going to call.
Well, I
up,
never told you who
know.
she was when I just said my friend Jane is
Well,
coming
of
here.
course, if you live in this area and you watched, Channel 4 television, you know who Jane Hansen is. of
30
course.
years.
Yeah, she's there a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
So she really likes what we're doing with live streaming.
I can see why. It's a great. I mean,
fun.
look, it's a great avenue for people who want to drive marketing and build content.
Absolutely.
And particularly now, given what's going on, the virtual world
Yeah.
is kind of getting a nice boost.
I just actually
So-
got a text an hour ago from a guy who's going to be running for office.
Yep.
And some things happened today where he's starting his show next week, every
Right.
week through the election in November.
Makes sense.
And it's smart for him to do that, and smart for him to do it after the election as well.
well,
because
sure.
one of the biggest problems with candidates who become, started holding offices, now they hide. Right?
think?
But he'll be out there even when he's in office.
Should be. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's going to help his career tremendously.
yeah.
So, but anyway, appreciate you coming on. We don't have credits this week, but next week we have on the CEO, I think, of the Suffolk chapter of Habitat for Humanity, a gentleman by the name of Lee Silberman, and we're really looking forward for Lee to come here and talk to us about his career as well as Habitat for Humanity. So next week we will see you Tuesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time,
Yep.
and
Savings.
we'll see you next week.
All righty.
Bye. Mike's down? Okay. Good idea to put that up there, Mike. Good idea to put that up there. I'll just add the credits in later and I'll do an on-demand version. No, don't worry about it. My bad. Yeah, my bad. Yeah. Right, and then end the recording.